Ska vi alltså på denna basinkomstdag gå in på åtminstone jag tycker ett av de mest spännande föreläsningarna vi har under de här 5 dagarna, då vi har fått fint besök från Finland och från tankesmedjan Tänk som jobbar med det kommande finska basinkomstförsöket. Så vi ska få bli kloka på vad som händer i vårt östra grannland, och de som ska göra oss kloka är Markus Kanerva. Jag vet inte om jag uttalar rätt. Ganska rätt. Och Ohto Kanninen. Det är okej. Ja. Bra. Jag lämnar ordet direkt över till. Och jag ska säga att nu kommer de här presentera det här på 1 timme. Det blir inga diskussioner med er. Men sen så kommer vi direkt på det här köra 1,5 timme diskussion om det här, där vi både kommer ta upp lite mer folk på scenen, och också kommer ni få vara involverade i diskussionen och ställa frågor och så. Men nu är det bara ett rent föredrag då ni får sitta tysta och snälla och lyssna. Varsågod.
Okej, jättetrevligt att vara här i Almedalen. Måste säga det är första gången för mig att vara i Almedalen i huvudtaget och sen komma in på stage. Tack för inbjudan. Unfortunately, from this on, the presentation will be in English, but I think you will be just fine. I think we'll all be better off if we are presenting this in English. We come from a think tank called Tänk, as we say in Finnish. We are independent. We don't belong to any political party. What we work with are different topics about well-being, and we think basic income could be one potential way to improve the well-being of Finnish people. But we are not sure, therefore we think we should experiment that. And Ohto Kanninen with me, he is a Tänk fellow, but he also works for the Löntagarnas forskningsgruppen in Finland. So the basic reason why we are here, exactly why we two are here, we can thank our Prime Minister, Juha Sipilä. He wrote with his team on the governmental program about a year ago that a basic income pilot study will be performed in Finland. And this is something that actually leaves a lot of room for speculation. For instance, does he already have a plan for basic income? Is he prepared to implement that sometime in the near future? Well, we will be answering these questions. But before going further, I think it's really important to understand what is basic income. And this is a definition by Van Parijs, who's a Belgian scholar, and he says that a basic income is an income unconditionally paid to all on an individual basis without means test or work requirement. Why I want to stress that we all agree what is basic income, that I've been in the meetings with Finnish ministers, and they haven't even always picked up what is basic income. Before going further, I'd like to ask you to raise hand if you think that Swedes would stop working if they receive basic income high enough for basic needs. So if you think that Swedes would stop working, please raise your hand. There's one person, maybe two. No, not everyone, but you think some people would. Okay.
You mean work for money?
Sorry?
You mean work for money?
Yeah, work for money. Yeah. Okay, think about yourself. Would you stop working if you receive basic income that is high enough for your basic needs? Okay, there's more people here. Well, I didn't expect this actually to happen, so you've just ruined my presentation. I don't know what to do now. Okay, there was a European study about attitudes on basic income, and this was done quite recently, and then they surveyed about 10,000 European people in different countries. And 43% say that basic income would encourage other people to start working. So they think other people will start working if they would receive basic income that is high enough for the basic needs. But only 4% say that they would start working. I think this is one of the core issues, well, not in Sweden, obviously, as we saw, where about 95% people don't have any opinion, I guess, that we think other people behave differently than we do. And if the 4% say that they would not stop working, I think we wouldn't have really an issue with the basic income. I think we would go straight away implementing that. But this is one of the reasons why we really need to study this. So going back to the governmental program of the Finnish Prime Minister, so he didn't have a plan in his back pocket. And so therefore there was a research consortium chosen to start work last September to prepare information, to look into different models, look into different ways to experiment what maybe could be the different income levels, tax levels, and so on. And there was a report published at the end of March, and since then there have been meetings with the government and the research group to look into what the political side thinks could be a good model for a pilot. And at the moment our friends in Finland from different organizations, they are preparing a law, experimentation law, that should be passed during the coming fall, so that we would have a pilot experiment starting at the beginning of next year. And this is a extremely stressful timetable, as you can imagine. Passing laws in such a short notice doesn't happen that often actually, but that really stresses the importance of this pilot to the Finnish government. The plan is to continue later, 2018, with a more comprehensive experiment, so that we would have results to be evaluated in 2019. And one of the reasons why 2019 they want to study the result is that there will be parliamentary elections in the same year in April. So we are kind of like expecting that election to be quite a lot about basic income if and when we have results from these different pilots. Just to point out that there are a lot of different stakeholders preparing this pilot. You can see what are the members of a research group that is led by the Social Insurance Institution of Finland. So Försäkringskassan is kind of like the similar organization in Sweden. So there's the Institute for Economic Research, our think tank, different universities, the Finnish Innovation Fund, representatives for Finnish enterprises, and so on. So this is a huge push from different stakeholders. When our research group got the assignment, we thought that maybe there are some other experiments that we could look into, maybe copy-paste something useful, or at least learn something. And actually there are not that many cases, actually surprisingly few. And surprisingly, most of the well, most of the more advanced experiments were done in the US in the 1960s and in the 1970s. And there was also one done in Canada, but the results from there can't really be directly linked to the Finnish society and what's the situation in today's world. That what was it about 50 years ago? The whole situation is such a different, and there were also some not well. I could call them errors in the design that they had in their studies, that they didn't really give that useful results. There are also some more recent experiments done in Kenya, Uganda, Brazil, India, but you can imagine that something that happens in India can really be implemented the same way here in our societies. Of course, you can always speculate that the human behavior is quite universal, and I agree with that. But still, it's such a difference between Sweden or Finland with India. There's a lot of news articles about the Netherlands and how they have planned to do some experiments. Actually, there's a lot of articles where they already say that they are doing those. That's wrong. They have not done anything yet. So those are also coming, and they are much smaller. The latest information that I have from the Netherlands comes from one of the bigger cities there. I think it was Utrecht, and where they are planning to have 250 people in their experiments, which is actually quite a small number. And also Canada, the most fantastic country nowadays in the world, so they are also planning in Ontario. So as you see, Finland is actually surprisingly progressive what comes to developing and finding new ways to build the social welfare system through this process of experimenting basic income. We will continue from this by going through what's the political debate behind the Finnish experiment, how we have reached this point. Also, what is the Finnish social welfare system today in brief, so that you got a good picture where this experiment lands in the landscape. And Ohto will continue with the other two points in a minute. So going to the political debate. Personally, I was quite surprised that Prime Minister Juha Sipilä actually wanted to bring basic income to table, to discussions. His party, the Center Party, which is one of the three main parties in Finland, has had a position of being the leading party, the Prime Minister party, during the past 40 years, now and then. So they've actually had their chances already before, and they have been proposing or being positive about basic income pretty much since the 1980s. But it seems that if there's one person who has enough will, that will actually make things happen. So in the 1980s, there was a threat from automation, which meant that a lot of jobs from manufacturing sector were destroyed, which brought the citizen income to discussion. But then in the 1990s, things got a bit worse, a lot worse in Finland than in Sweden, thanks to the depression, and that kind of like killed the discussion. But afterwards, the discussion of basic income came back through the idea that maybe we could increase flexibility in the job market with basic income. Yeah. Then during the 20th century, to improve incentives to work seemed to be the reason why basic income came back to the discussion. So there were so many different layers in the social security system that we needed to find a way to make work again somehow a good option. In 2007, there was a huge push to redesign the social welfare. There was a committee named, which had pretty much everybody from Finland, and maybe there were a bit too many people because they didn't really come into any good consensus what we should do, and all that work was done for nothing. So nothing came out from that. But in 2014 came out a pamphlet, a report from our think tank, wrote by Ohto Kanninen and his colleague Mikko Fors. The biggest point was that we should use randomized field experiments to study how different policy suggestions work. And they chose, well, wisely, when we look back, basic income as a pilot or as an example that how we could actually study basic income through a randomized field experiment, if it works or not. And this recommendation was, yes, you've already learned, was picked up by the Finnish Prime Minister. Well, the rest is history. Or the rest is future, actually. Going back to the Finnish debate about basic income and the different models, a couple of hours ago we had some panelists here to present their Swedish models. In Finland also some political actors, but also academic actors have been active on this field. But the parameters, they have varied quite a lot in the models. With the parameters, I mean what would be the good income level, what would be the different tax rates, what would happen to the housing benefits, and all such things. They have varied a lot. In most of the models, they have been financed by collecting the basic income back through taxes. Also some more innovative ideas there, using new taxes about the environment and such. And also some other additional models which have some of the aspects but not really being the basic income model. Looking in the support of basic income by different parties. So the Greens, like here, they have always favored basic income. The Left Alliance, which is about the same size as the Green Party, roughly around 10%. So they are also in favor, and Center Party, which is one of the three biggest, meaning around 20%. National Coalition Party, which is like Moderaterna, there's very mixed support. More kind of like the entrepreneurial side of the party, they are in favor of basic income, but they're more of the more traditional or conservative side, things that you should never give money for nothing. Then we have the critical parties, Social Democrats, which is one of the three big parties alongside Center and National Coalition Party. So they have always been opposing Finns party, which is close to the Sverigedemokraterna in their agenda, meaning they are very, very populistic party. Surprisingly, they are critical. I personally think that they would be in favor for giving money for nothing. Swedish People's Party, which is a very minor party, such as Christian Democrats, they have had their own models. But quite surprisingly, when we look into the voters, or people who say that they usually vote for Social Democrats, you can see Social Democrats being the party here with 37 seats colored with orange. So 69% of their voters think that basic income is a good idea, which is quite surprising, thinking that Social Democrats as a party is very much against. And then Center Party, among their voters, 62% think that basic income is a good thing. And this is now the Prime Minister Party, which is driving quite forcefully this project forward. Well, this wide popular support about basic income, which is roughly 70%, actually melts down like an ice cream in sun when you remind people that actually basic income costs money through higher taxes. So when there was a survey, and about 70% said that basic income is a very good idea or a quite good idea, but then in a later survey where they were reminded that actually that would mean a tax rate of 40% or 45% and so on. So it went to be between 24 to 35% support. So now let's move on to the Finnish welfare state.
All right, thank you, Markus. A couple of things that I'd like to add on what Markus said. The most important thing is the pronunciation of our think tank. It's Tänk, not think. That's really important. There is a wordplay there, but for future reference, Tänk. And the other thing is, perhaps you left out from your timeline, next fall, an important part of the political process is a constitution, but I don't think we have a slide on that, is a constitutional checkup. So for the experiment to go through, it means that we're setting people in unequal situations. Some people will have a basic income and some people will have the traditional Finnish welfare state. And those people will face a different welfare system. And obviously in the constitution there is one bullet for equality. But it says that given good excuse or good reason, we can make temporary exceptions on that. And next fall they're going to have a constitutional checkup on that, and that is a big hurdle that we're still facing before anything can go through. And actually it's going to be interesting. If it goes through, it means that in the future we can actually run these types of experiments. Okay, a little bit about the Finnish welfare state. I will compare it to Sweden, and actually whatever applies to Sweden mostly applies to Finland, just for you to know more or less the background on what type of ground we're laying this experiment on. So Sweden is around 15-20% richer than Finland, around 15-20% higher income inequality. Depending on the measure, you'll get other numbers as well, but slightly higher income inequality. Around the same tax revenue numbers, so large welfare states in both countries. Obviously, most of Finnish legislation and welfare programs are grounded on the Swedish one, so no surprise, they are very similar. One interesting thing, I was looking up all these numbers. I think an interesting thing is the wealth Gini thing. Whereas Finland is among the most equal ones in terms of wealth. So how much accumulated wealth people have, not income, how much accumulated wealth people have. Sweden is among the most unequal ones in the world, next to Argentina, for example. So that's actually something, I guess, I don't know if a lot of you knew, but I just learned about it recently. It's a kind of I guess a different history that Sweden has, different accumulation of wealth. So that's a little difference that we have. Won't affect how basic income should be run, I guess, but just a little difference, these two countries. Another thing we talked about yesterday, social expenditures per GDP, it's really the same number in both countries. All right, and so Finnish welfare state, the same applies to the Swedish one, has a lot of targeted programs. So if you're sick, if you're unemployed, you'll get this and that benefit. Conditional, you'll have to look for work, you have to do this and that to get your money, or you'll get less if you don't. Means tested, if you get more money, if you have more income, then you'll lose your benefits. In kind, you'll get a house sometimes instead of getting the money to get a house, or you'll get a home, and some of them in cash. So many different programs, a little bit of a hodgepodge, something that earlier today was used as a reason why Sweden perhaps should move on to basic income to get rid of such a hodgepodge. And obviously an important foundation of the Nordic welfare state is the social insurance system. We all pay money from our income into the common pot, then we get sick or unemployed or so on, or old or whatever, then we get from the common pot. And that's the core of the Nordic welfare state. And this is really an important part of the discussion. Do we really, if we go on to basic income, what parts of the core do we want to break? And the social insurance really is that core. Do we want to get rid of that and move into a completely basic income system, or just some sort of a combination of the two? When it comes to healthcare, I'm not an expert, but to me it seems that Finland has a little bit more private healthcare than Sweden. Primary healthcare is mostly private, actually, in Finland. The specialized one is public. Education, however, in Finland is fully public, whereas in Sweden there's private education. Okay, just a little bit again about the Finnish present system. Here are, on the x-axis is your earnings, y-axis is your what you call marginal effect, I think, so the marginal taxation or the effective marginal taxation. The gray color there is the tax, pink and yellow are different programs that you have in place. And as you can see, for example, if a couple, one earning 2,000 euros per month, the other one earns, let's say, from the picture, 1,500 per month. If they earn 1,501, so €1 more, they will lose around 70% of that. So that's a question of incentives to work. So first of all, you will lose that, but you probably will not be aware of how much you will lose of your benefit, because the system is a hodgepodge. This is an easy example that I wanted to show here in the beginning, just to kind of keep it simple, whereas the basic income will look like this. Go on.
What was the colors?
Okay, I don't want to get too deep into this, into the specifics. Unemployment benefit is the pink one, and the blue one is the housing benefit in this particular. But I can give you a different example, and it'll be different programs. Yeah. So the basic income, every model in Finland that you really talk about always has just. There were different models being offered here earlier today. Every model in Finland just has one tax rate, here 55%. But in Finland, the discussion revolves around a very simplified system. Although actually the picture is a little wrong on the left-hand side, don't worry about that. And here's them juxtaposed against each other, and you can see, okay, one is pretty simple, the other looks pretty complex. Okay, but that was the easy example. Let's take a complex example. Unemployed couple, 2 children. And here you have half a dozen programs. If a person earns, so if the other one is unemployed, the other one earns around 800 euro. Actually, what happens on the left-hand side picture, the marginal rate is above 100%. So they will actually lose money by earning more. So there's still, this is an ugly example. This is one of the bad examples. Usually these bad examples are with families with children. It comes to the idea that we want to support the families. Even if the parents don't make money, we want our families not to be poor. Well, the problem is that we give a lot of money, so there's not a lot of incentives to work more. And the right-hand side, you'll see that, let's say the other one is unemployed, the other one earns 800 euro. If you look at it on the right-hand side picture, around on the x-axis, 800. They will get net earnings of 2,600. And then if that person increased their income to 2,500, the net earnings will remain the same. So by tripling their income, they'll basically not get a penny more. And you could call them that earnings trap or whatever, but clearly, you can claim that this is a problem in the present system. All right, about the Finnish experiment. So this was kind of just some foundations on what the present system is. So the Finnish experiment, like Markus said, so we wrote this pamphlet 18 months ago, and mainly our focus was on experimentation, on different ways to learn about the society, people's behavior, people's response to different programs, and it was kind of an example that we took. Okay, let's take this complex thing, everybody's supporting and being against it, let's take this complex system and let's experiment, let's find out what it really does. And we took that example, we gave some ideas as to how we would do it, and like Markus said, they actually implemented that in the government program, and now we're doing it. And you said it's a good thing. I'm still not sure. I think we could have taken it simpler, looking back at something way simpler as a first experiment to run. Now we run into the problem that we're doing a very complex experiment, a reform, whereas we haven't experimented anything before. Nobody has in the way that we're doing. So I think there's a lot of stuff piling up. Okay, so I think this is an important slide. It was initially called Government Aims for the Experiment. I realized I don't represent the government. I don't represent Tänk or anybody else. I talk for myself, I speak for myself. So let's call it Aims of the Experiment. So there's different aims from different interest groups coming in. And I think that's the reason that I just realized this morning, that I think that's the reason why you have, in Finland, you have some left-wingers supporting the basic income, you have some right-wingers supporting the basic income. They're supported for completely polar opposite reasons. And that's why you get this hodgepodge field of a fanatic here and there, and you don't know what's going on. But let's go through some of these. So the most abstract one is, okay, we'll reform the existing system to better match with societal changes, and usually future societal change. So we feel like the world is going and moving fast, and we need a system that'll answer those changes the best. The problem obviously is if it's about predicting the future, we don't really know how those changes are going to look. But there are some changes that I've already taken. So I think the predicting part is a little weak argument, but I think the strong argument here is the changes that have already taken place. And I think one of them for the Finnish society is that basically the welfare state in Finland is pretty much built for the paper mill worker. For a guy who works in the export industry in a big factory, and it's, I think the system is optimal for that guy. It's really hard to improve it upon that. The problem is, since the 60s, let's say it was built in the 60s, or finished up in the 70s or 80s, things have changed. There's more entrepreneurs, small companies, one-person companies, freelancers, people like these. And for them, you can clearly make the claim that the present system isn't the one. And I think that's a really relevant discussion. Okay, that's the first kind of a reason to start doing something. Second, this one, the number two is really I'm an academic economist. So this is really the neoclassical mainstream economics, labor economics thing. Labor supply questions. If I give you more money, what is your, now here's some jargon, your substitution effect and your income effect? How will you respond in your labor supply? And we don't really know, it depends on the system. There's a lot of studies on that, but that's really at the core of the group of researchers running the experiment in Finland. This is really the core question that people want answers to. What if we give you more money for doing nothing? How will you respond? What if we tax your next euro with 80% instead of 50% or with 30%? How will you respond? If you're poor, if you're rich, will these people respond differently? That is really at the core. You use different language for that. Increase labor supply increase, abolishing work disincentives, increasing work incentives. It's all about the same question, just different people using different languages. I think it's a very Lutheran concept of more work is always better. This is at the core of Finnish discussion. If you say, listen, people should work a little less, maybe enjoy their time, you're really never gonna get votes or anything. So that's not the way to go in a Lutheran country. I guess it's the same here, I don't know. Okay, so that's at the core. That's really the core question, and that's what we want to ask. Will the basic income and what type of parameter values will do what to labor supplies? And it's not obvious that it's always the more money we give to people, the less they will work. It's not obvious from economic theory. Number 3, bureaucracy. Here is one where you see right-wing people supporting basic income because it will diminish bureaucracy. You see left-wing people supporting basic income because it will diminish bureaucracy, but they look at different parts of the bureaucracy. The right-winger will look at, okay, we got people working for the government, that's costly. Let's reduce that number. But actually, if you look at the programs, say the social insurance and such,